So we're finally doing a program, and after all these years and everything, it's really good to be able to welcome you to it and everything. We're putting a lot of things together. We got a lot to talk about.
We have it there.
Yeah, goes back, I don't know, how many, 20 years, I mean?
Every bit of 20 years.
Yeah. Those were the days, huh?
We schlepped that 3/4-inch deck around.
Remember that sucker? Yeah, welcome very much to our Conversations. A pleasure to welcome to the program an old friend of Conversations, and that being Evstaveous, is that the way he says it, or Steve Neskis, but Evstaveous, is that the right pronunciation?
It is Evstaveous.
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 Yeah, okay. Anyway, welcome to the program, and he's an old friend, as we say. We used to do some taping together way in the back in the old days, and he's helping put things together. He's an entrepreneurial inclined person, and he's a futurist, I think it's fair to say, and he's also got a foundation called the United Peace Foundation. And Evstaveous, welcome very much to Conversation.
It's good to be here, Harold.
Yeah, after all these years, still crazy after all these years.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it a little bit. We got an hour and we got a lot to talk about, but maybe you could share your own background, you know, if you could, because this program is going to be sort of centered on you. And maybe you could share your own background, where you were born and raised, that kind of stuff, and some of your major concerns. And we'll talk about the human condition and the state of the world and so forth.
Love to. Well, Harold, you know, it goes back a little ways. When I was born in New York City. And I lived here for 2 years, and then I moved back to Virginia. Didn't have any choice in that matter.
Not at 2. You don't have many choices at 2, no. Usually, yeah.
And we settled in a town called Norfolk, Virginia. And a
lot of military bases there?
There is quite a few military.
Navy, right?
Navy.
Yeah.
Quite a big Navy base there. We have one of the largest natural harbors in the United States there, which scientists think that it was created by a meteorite.
Oh, I'll be darned. I didn't know that, yeah.
So, in fact, the shock waves were felt all the way to New York and as far as West Virginia. So the tidal wave was quite immense. Yeah. And there was quite an extinction process that happened there. But it paved the way for us to have the beautiful Chesapeake Bay, which about 65% of the seafood sea life actually spawned there on the East Coast. So it's quite a prolific, productive estuary that we are inclined to keep a close watch on right now, because it has had a decline.
Ecologically?
Ecologically. Yeah. Through the Keepone poisoning that was once being developed. And in Richmond, Virginia, they didn't know it was poisonous, but it really affected the bay and stuff like that. But anyway, getting back to a little bit of history about me, I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, and went to elementary school, junior high there, and my family were all entrepreneurs. We opened up little restaurants in Norfolk, and I was able to learn my entrepreneurial experience through the restaurant business there. And of course, growing up in that area, we didn't make much money at that time. I think $300 a week was a lot of money.
Well, maybe in those days it were.
And so we worked real hard, as restaurateurs do, and as a Greek person, most of us Greeks opened up a restaurant.
I tell you, the world would never be the same without those wonderful diners. It's interesting, different groups have a certain kind of pattern, and the Greek community seems to set up these diners that dot the world now, or dot, you know, the countryside and all over, and they're really part of the American landscape.
They are that.
Yeah.
And thank God for our good coffee, a place to have a cup of coffee.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah. So, you know, as I was growing up back in the old days, they didn't have laws against working at 9 years old like they do today. But I mopped the floor, and around 10, 11, I started turning over the hamburgers and taking cash, you know. So I had this great banter with individuals and humanity, and I was able to observe the different aspects of different people, because I would be able to take an order to AT&T building and deal with high-level executives, and then go by the old friend that he was in front of a store. He was a blind man. I used to give him part of my tip, and we used to communicate and share stories. And this was what life was about. It was about interaction and about realizing what life was.
Okay, yeah.
So to move the story along, I almost graduated high school. I lacked about 4 credits, but I couldn't get through high school because they wouldn't answer the question why.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh, what does that mean?
Today they changed their ways a lot, but back in the old days they just said, just do what you're told, and that's it.
And that didn't sit well with you?
Not as an entrepreneur.
You had an entrepreneurial way, right? All right, yeah, all right.
So, 6th grade I had the teacher speaking about anything and everything, and they wrote it on their little class picture. We couldn't have passed with that. You had Miss Beale talking about anything and everything, because I always ask the question why. I think it's such an important question to ask if you're going to take it to the next level.
I was just trying to think, in journalism they get the who, what, when, where, and how, but very often they don't get the why.
The why.
It's like analysis, or trying to understand why things are happening, what's the rationale behind it.
Yeah, that's correct. So I left high school lacking about 4 credits, and I got a job at a railroad working on the air brakes, blowing out rivets. And that was quite a pay scale hike for me. It was about $1,000 a week back in those days. So that was quite a bit of money. But I soon discovered that working there was not for me. It was too laboring. And so I got another job working as a telephone solicitor for a company called Massanutten. Was a joint venture with Daily Web. And well, I was a telephone solicitor, so we went something like this. Hello, Mr. Prospect, my name is Steve Neskis, and I'm with the Massanutten Development Company. We're a ski and golf resort located 30 miles east of Harrisonburg, Virginia. And a man stuck his head inside the door and he says, "Boy, you got a mouth. Let me show you how to use it." And
Who that man were? Who was that man that did that? Somebody who...
He was an entrepreneur set by Dale Carnegie to train people. And he saw something in me that he saw in himself when he was my age.
He would have been what, around 20 or 18?
I was just turning 19.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So I was just a youngster.
High school dropout.
Full of piss and vinegar.
Yeah, right, right.
But a dropout. And so he showed me about training the mind, and he gave me 2 books that were just monumental in the discovery of the imagination, and that was Think and Grow Rich and The Magic of Thinking Big.
That sounds like Napoleon Hill.
That was Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill. I've heard about him I've never read him carefully, but yeah.
Amazing, amazing. At that time, he was probably one of the forefathers of the imagination and motivation and training. And he never really said what was the secret. He said, there's a secret that I'm going to share with you. You may get it at the beginning of the book, or the middle of the book, at the end of the book, or you may never get it. So it was something to ponder. But I like to explain to people what it really is right off the bat. It's your imagination.
Imagination.
Yes. Imagination. The imagination of mind to create things, to develop things. Look where it's gotten so far. Now we even mapping the gene.
The whole genome.
Right. So
amazing, yeah.
So this only happened because of our imagination. To be able to take science from one step to another, to ask the question why, and to move it piece by piece, day by day, discovery by discovery. This is the whole nucleus of what humanity's about. To be able to utilize the imagination. So we have the imagination. So what I have discovered, and I'll say this a few times throughout the show probably, but a thought is an intangible form of mass. Once projected, you shall receive it.
So you could image. Okay, go on. Spell it out. Yeah.
Okay.
So what does that mean in reality? I mean, what is that?
The Bible even has that piece in it. Oh, ye of little faith.
Mustard seed or
If you
something?
had the faith of a mustard seed, you could move mountains.
Now, what does that mean? The faith of mustard seed being the imagination or the imaging of a certain kind of reality that you want to see become part of the reality, or I don't quite understand.
I asked that same question, the why again.
Yeah.
What is it that you're trying to say? Because I've always had a unique experience with life. I've always had a dialogue with God, or the force within you. You can call it what you want, but that little voice that talks to you as a child, the little stories that you talk to yourself about, I don't know if you ever experienced it or not, but when I asked that question, again, the book, The Magic of Thinking Big and Think and Grow Rich came out, and I went, oh, I get it. I finally got what the book was trying to say, and the book was trying to say that the imagination was the greatest thing. If you had the faith of a mustard seed, well, what is faith for most people? It's a belief. Would you give me that?
Yeah, it seems that way, yeah.
Okay. So
without necessarily having all of the facts answered in that sense about, you may not even have, faith to me implies a certain kind of ability to do something or to go about a certain action that when you maybe do not have all of the whys that you were.
Absolutely. So it's a belief system. So you believe it's going to happen regardless if you have all the answers to it. Okay. So faith is a belief. And when you take belief to the next level, what is a belief?
Thought, I guess.
Absolutely. And so, again, a thought is an intangible form of mass. But, oh, ye little faith, that means you don't keep the thought beside you, in front of you, all the time, so you don't get it attracted to you again. Because, see, a thought is like an energy force. When you put it out, you receive it. For instance, people that believe in voodoo. Okay,
voodoo.
I'm going to take an extreme way of explaining this, but if you believe in voodoo, you'd have a voodoo doll, and you stick that voodoo doll, and that person will either get well or sick. Because that person believes in that system, it affects them. It opens up a little paradigm shift somehow in their spiritual reception. But if you don't believe in voodoo dolls, it ain't going to affect you.
And that means because the mythos, I don't know anything much about that, but you stick a pin in a doll and then the person feels the pain. That's the sort of thing. But if the person doesn't believe in voodoo dolls, they won't feel the pain.
They won't feel the pain.
So it's a thing, mind over matter, mind over thing. I mean, is it like Norman Vincent Peale, you know, think positive and that kind of thing is in terms of, is he distinct from that positive thinking kind of thing that has been part of the Puritan ethic or something?
Well, it's more than positive thinking. It's just think of a window. You have a bunch of windows. And in this window, I believe in voodoo. And on this window, I believe in God is going to heal me without any medication. And this window, I believe the doctor can heal me, or a specific way of healing, whether it be homeopathic or medicine, or or cutting into you. So there are many ways to receive that information. So when you believe a certain way, that window opens up or closes.
I'm trying to follow you with all the metaphors of windows and stuff. Or these are thoughts, ways of thought, or thinking, or ways of seeing things, or comprehensive constructs, or metaphors, or something. Yeah.
If you don't believe in the doctor and his healing approach, he can't heal you. Okay, because 90% of the healing becomes in the brain.
Well, I think there is something to be said for that, the mind over matter and that sort of thing. But I do like the idea, if I happen to have an infection, that there is such a thing as penicillin, which doesn't have anything much to do. It's autonomic. It doesn't have much to do with whether I believe in penicillin or not. They give it to me and it attacks and cures the disease, whether or not I believe in penicillin or know about it or think about it or image it or anything like that. I mean, in terms of, you know what I'm saying?
Well, the doctor is going to say to you, this penicillin is going to heal you. So all of a sudden, when you take it, it's the belief right there.
Well, that's a
That
big
is,
assumption, if I may, on your
yeah.
part, because when you take it, it's not necessarily the belief that you believe in what the doctor says or something. It is the penicillin itself. Apart from what you think about the penicillin, it will have an effect upon your body, and it will cure your body, whether or not you believe in it or how you're thinking about it.
It could.
At that level. I mean,
then again,
there
it
is
could
that.
not.
And there's a lot of other things in the material world
Yeah.
along those lines that don't have anything to do with the faith and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Although
Right.
the mind over matter and the faith thing is a big factor, and I think it's being figured more and more into medicine now. They're beginning to understand a lot of those Eastern meditative things. And
so much more. The touch, the just the person sensing the energy around you can be so profound. But again, you have to believe it. Again, a thought is an intangible form of mass, and you really have to believe in it. And that's why you go to a certain doctor to get healed, because you believe in that doctor, and so whatever he prescribes, whether he or she prescribes, I should say, is something that works. But we'll talk more about that later
well,
on.
I tend to want to lump those things into the, like, I think Norman Vincent Peale, and it would say the power of positive thinking.
Right, right.
And a lot of the talk there is about have a good sense of your self-image and a good sense about yourself. And this kind of language, a lot of it gets into what they call New Age thinking. Or
well,
that sort of
there
thing.
are a group of people,
Or,
New
you know,
Agers, that use it. But all throughout society, the force of imaging and positive thinking, your shamans, all these people use the force of imagery to invoke spiritual healing, or exorcisms and things like that.
Is there a danger about it, people, if I may, because you live in a material world and there's things going on, let's say, and you're in a situation, and sometimes you're in a situation, and there's a danger that there can be people that are in that if you accept that notion of the world, the way things are, it gets to be where you create your own reality, and it's got a tremendous stake in the individual's ability to form their own reality, which is not necessarily the case in some situations. Let's say a concentration camp at Auschwitz, and the people say they're going to be put into they're going to be executed. And they can say, I'm going to image my way. I'm not going to do it, but it is going to happen, and it does. Or to say you're going to affect the world in terms of, let's say, justice or something like that, and the injustices go on, no matter how much you're thinking in a positive way. And in a certain sense, the sociological or economic or political consequences, the context within human relations take place, can be finessed as being relevant if you just say it's all up to the individual to image whatever they think, and then life will be good for themselves. It's very individually oriented consciousness and the ability of the person to control their own destiny. They form their own reality kind of concept.
We do.
Well,
and we don't realize it.
Well,
but,
I question whether that is in fact the case.
I mean, if you're at the point of execution and you're strapped to the table,
yeah, and you can
you're
say,
gonna
I'm going to image I'm not here. Yes.
Well, you may leave your body and feel no pain, but your body may cease to exist as we know it.
You live within a system, and the system has certain consequences
there are finite,
apart from the individual. It seems to me there's an awful lot of concentration in a certain sense upon the individual being able to have control over their own life, when in fact they are part of a system that has effects upon them. It's a sociological seeing of the individual rather than a strictly individualistic viewing of the individuals. What I'm saying, there can be too much of an attention to that notion that everything is in the control of the individual. If they're a failure, it's because they haven't worked hard enough or something like that. And that's used by people in power in order to keep people,
to manipulate people.
Yeah, and
obviously.
you understand what I'm saying.
Sure. I mean, nothing is one way, Harold.
That's right.
Even though we're individually moving along, you with your talk show, me with my Peace Foundation and my entrepreneurial projects that I have, we are affected by the political climate that Bush has been created,
or the whole world,
the economy, and all these other, the rent that we have to pay, that we only live maybe 1 or 2 paychecks from being broke, as most people are. I mean, there are those factors that do shape our life and have great influence over that.
Yeah, well, I wasn't thinking individually in terms of you and I. I'm thinking of it sociologically, or a view, because you got nurture and nature, you got these kind of things. And there are certain kinds of things that fundamentalist things about the individual, and that's important, but the individual is part of a system. And that system has consequences in terms of what's going on,
but
and affects you apart from your own individualized imaging of things.
Sure.
You know?
But let me give you an example of how an individual can make the big changes in life.
Big changes an individual will make.
An individual can make big changes in the whole scheme of life, even. I mean, if you look at people like Thomas Jefferson and Lewis Kelso, they are Robert Kennedy, they are
Bill Gates,
or
Thomas Edison, or Michelangelo, or
these
something.
people have, they started off in their garage, you know, Bill Gates, or
dropped out of college. I think he got through high school.
Most intelligent people had to, because they didn't want to get manipulated.
Yeah, well,
they didn't want to get preformed into a system that takes away their individuality. And, you know, we're just talking about individuality.
No, and I'm not putting down individuality and all. It's just that it wouldn't be overstressed as being that's everything.
I mean, the corporations wants us to be like the military, where they destruct your personality and construct it to way it fits within their corporate lifestyle and procedure.
And its structure, its efficiency in terms of, or people on the assembly line in at a factory where they do something, you know, that metaphor and everything like that is pretty deadening of the human spirit. But
I'm going to show you, as we give this example of how I got into New York and developed my entrepreneurism.
We got to move along.
How an individual can make a change, and how things do develop through the thought process, and how imaging does work. And maybe if I give you some more examples, I might make a believer out of you, although we've had this discussion many times before.
Have we? Oh, okay. If you say so. Okay, I'm not sure. But I know I have other friends who like this fellow Napoleon Hill. I don't know.
Tremendous.
And
I mean,
Jane Roberts used to say that. Jane Roberts was from the realm of consciousness. She was what they call channeling from the spirit or something. And she had her thing, and she was a friend of mine. I loved her. She had a great sense of humor and everything. And she said, we form our own reality, you know. And it's that kind of there's a whole lot of belief systems based upon this extreme concentration upon the individual's capability of forming their own reality through their thought and consciousness process.
Absolutely.
And I don't put it down, but it's just I look at it a little askance.
I mean, you formed yourself as a talk show host. You could have been a truck driver, and that could have been your reality, you know. But you stuck to it, and you became this wonderful talk show host that has interviewed some of the greatest minds in the world.
Well, everybody has something they do, but you're influenced by the nurturing and the conditions that made it. I mean, it's a larger concept.
Sure.
I don't mean to put it down, but go ahead, develop some of your.
So as I got into this Think and Grow Rich and the magic of thinking big, and he taught me these things, I developed the personal understanding of the imagination and how great that was. Well, the second part of that. Well, that project ended, as projects do as entrepreneurs. You take on a project, it has a beginning and an end usually, and then you go on to the next project. You know. So there was a guy, Bob Gabriel, God bless him, he was a great man. Again, he saw me, said, well, I was like you when I was a youngster. And even though I didn't go to college, my education was with learned people that are movers and shakers.
Oh, I think it's perfect. There's a term. Now, some people understand, no, it's autodidact. And it's a perfectly legitimate, that means you're self-taught.
Self-taught,
and it's increasingly easy for somebody to become self-taught to the highest degree now, particularly with all the aids like the internet and so forth. If you've got a curiosity and interest, you can just reach out and learn whatever it is you want to do so much easier than you do in terms of a structured way of learning things.
Sure.
Remember the Latin irregular verbs you had to learn?
Oh my goodness!
And and you had to say, or algebra. I mean, and I guess there is something to be said for learning linear, certain kinds of things,
for certain
prerequisites
people.
And so forth.
Yeah.
But there is, like, they're testing the kids in the school now at third grade. They're going to try and set up tests and jump things so that they can measure their effect and everything. So the kid doesn't have a chance to be sort of a kid, you know. I mean. So there are a lot of people trying to set up structural systems like drill sergeants, setting up things that they're going to make as what you're doing. So there's that. You know.
I think it's okay to put into a child that you're a new spirit on this planet, and whatever your dreams or aspirations are, here are the master teachers, so to speak. And if we can let them, of course, like for instance, we learned now that children can speak at a younger age. We don't talk baby talk to them anymore.
No, they can learn, and learning, and that when they come out of the womb, if not before, the learning that's taking place is just absolutely incredible, and the context and the character is being shaped in those early months and that sort of thing, in years, and they can learn a language without learning, and without drills and things like that. They can learn, and they can, and I think maybe the most important thing really is if you start thinking, I just went to a seminar last night. Let me share it with you. I went to a seminar that was incredibly interesting about cancer research that's being done by biologists and medical people at Albert Einstein. And they had a description of the cell, the human cell. And it is incredibly, beautifully complex in terms of the interaction of what goes on. Even that beautiful book of Lewis Thomas about the life of a cell, it's so interesting, and they were linking into treating certain lymphomas by using the analogy, because the DNA has a circuitry and within the cell, and the point being is that we know that now in a way that we didn't know about the way things were because of the information we have and so forth. And it's very complex, and there's so much to know that it's a little hard to get the idea that somebody who thinks there's something essential you have to know, when in fact there's so much to know, and increasingly there's a revolutionary new findings in every field every day going on now. And so it's a matter of having the curiosity and maybe the system's pattern recognizing of putting those things together, which comes out of an engaged mind and a curiosity that children have in spades. And sometimes the educational process is intent upon focusing their attention on a linear thing in a disciplined way, like a drill sergeant that gets in the way.
And so,
and you get these things, attention deficit disorder. You can't attention.
Give them a pill.
Well, yeah.
Dull the mind some more.
The main task is to keep that curiosity alive, so that the person is out there finding there's nothing like finding the education you do when you're finding it for yourself.
Absolutely.
You know,
well, see, not to get off the subject.
That's that's educational policy. It's a big question in terms of our leadership.
I really have, because I quit school, an interest in education for all mankind, because everybody learns a little bit differently. Some people are manual people.
That's right.
Some people understand audio visually, which is something like...
That was, if I may, it was one of the things they stressed at the conference, because it was so engaging and interesting, because they made an analogy between that treating lymphomas and so forth, that the thing they're doing is it's comparable to hacking a computer system in terms of the information system within the cell. Staggeringly interesting, and it was just fascinating and everything. And one of the things, it really is, and they've been very successful. It's a very successful team at Albert Einstein, and they said one of the major things is imaging processes by which you can share this incredibly interesting knowledge with the general public. It's imaging, graphics and things by which it can be displayed and how it can be. So that's a challenge. I'm sorry, no,
that's okay.
Came into my head.
Most scientists realize that there's more that we don't know, that we don't even really know that we don't know.
That's what they said. We're learning more all the time, and we're learning more and more. We're just getting the edges of that, and that's expanding all the time. So when you've got so much, what is it that you're going to demand somebody concentrate on, or the specialization?
Absolutely.
Well, that may be okay, though, because you have to specialize,
I like
there should be room for comprehensive pattern recognizing between the disciplines.
I think we should learn as we play, allow the child to learn. I mean, I'm the kind of person, why should we sit down and say, okay, we're going to learn mathematics? Why can't we build a toy house and say this window, is a square, and teach mathematics that way? So it should be a fundamental experience, not a dull experience. So I'm very much into seeing it change in a way that it's uplifting, not so much regimented in debilitating the spirit, to soar to the potentiality that we have, because we only use, by scientists,
10%?
Less than 10% of our brain.
Yeah, right.
So we have a lot more capacity of utilization, and to find a way to trigger that, to develop that process is always, as an entrepreneur, been something that we work on, because we want to be able to receive as much of the imagination or what's in what we call the Akashic records.
Well, the Akashic records coming out of
out of the universal experience.
Well, yeah.
You know, so we want to feel
a lot of
that.
people question if that
well,
exists.
You know, only,
I mean,
you know,
like
you
people question.
don't know.
There's no such thing as the Akashic record. It's
you
just
don't,
a metaphor.
Yeah, it is a metaphor
for everything. Yeah.
But you don't know
Yeah.
until you experience the experience.
What experience?
The experience
tapping
of
into the Akashic record?
Or tapping into the experience of the imagination and receiving, or being clear, as a lot of the people say, meditate, be clear, the vessel, so you can receive whatever truth is being brought to you. Because every person has their very special experience in life to share with this human mankind, this human condition we call the earth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know, and we are at a time of a perhaps qualitative transformation, the evolution of, I don't know, consciousness?
We are at that.
There are some people who wonder, is there such a thing as universal consciousness? Is there a universal intelligence? Is there a purpose in the universe? Is it all just an evolutionary pattern out of random happenings and that sort of thing? It's a big question.
It is a
before us
question
now.
that may not be answered for many, many years. But we're continuing on with the experiment. So getting back to the history, if I may.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah,
no, that's a good. It's a good banter, and I love it because it really adds to what we're talking about. But you know, so after that one project, and I got finished with it, this gentleman named Bob Gabriel, he goes, you know, I was at your age the same way. I want to take you on. And he was with Dan Advertisement Agency, an advertiser. But he was an entrepreneur as well. Okay.
An advertising entrepreneur. Now, a lot of people would feel very, very uncomfortable at the contemplating of being involved with an advertising entrepreneur.
Well, let me see what he did.
Let me tell you what I'm going to do.
Well, let me tell you what he did do.
You know,
he actually got liquor by the drink for our whole Virginia Beach area. And in our restaurant, when we got first bar, you had to have two cocktail tables together. You couldn't have a bar, and you couldn't pick up your drink. You had to have a waitress to pick up your drink. But he was able to break through the Bible Belt experience of Pat Robinson, the 700 Club, and all the conservative, you know.
I guess that's down in Virginia, right?
Yeah, mentality, which was, you know, monumental in that.
Well, something about in a bar he did a change or something.
He
was an advertising entrepreneur. Okay,
and he was able to bring liquor by the drink to Virginia Beach by his entrepreneur experiential development of how to approach it.
Yeah.
So he was able to do that. Not only that, and I wasn't there with him when he did that, but he brought the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young concert to Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
22,000 people in Foreman Field. Never been done before. He wrote a book on how to handle a large audience. Put burlap all around the building, so in case there was a riot outside, nobody would see inside.
Right.
And he had to pay for a riot gear about $18,000 or $19,000, and have a whole police group of people with riot gear in the library in case there was a riot. Got them to say it's okay to smoke pot, just bust the dealers, but don't bust the people, you know, smoking the pot.
Yeah.
And, I mean, so this.
It was like that Woodstock Festival.
Right,
Somebody put it together. Okay. And
that's an entrepreneur.
That's right. When an entrepreneur, they usually think is somebody who's doing a business thing and is involved with, as Mr. Napoleon Hill's book said, get rich. I guess he meant you make money, you get materially successful.
Not just.
But if you're entrepreneurial, you can be doing a project like that with that thing with the liquor. I don't know. That could have been political. A senator or somebody could be operating.
Well, being an entrepreneur involves all of that, Harold. It involves spiritual. It involves financial. It doesn't have to be any one or the other, but it is a collective. It is this experience that is a total experience. An entrepreneur does not take one side of the human experience and say, "Oh, I'm just going to make money." Some people do.
No, but that's not
the reason to be an entrepreneur.
That's the view that a lot of people have when they use the word entrepreneur.
Sure, but that's not
a guy who's a hustler making money.
Well,
and that's what they view of it is.
Yeah.
But it's something more than that.
Much
and
deeper,
that which you're
much
talking
deeper.
about is more than that. It's an active-oriented mentality and consciousness that can be involving the arts and doing things,
So
and it
much
could
more,
be involved in things that don't even have anything to do with the material or the active, the money or the economic world. It
Right.
could be in the world of the arts or getting something achieved in the world.
Right. It can
Design,
be a mechanism.
education.
More so than financial. You know, it doesn't have to be just financial.
Yeah.
Or it could be inclusive of all that.
Why did Mr. Hill not say imagine and realize your dream rather than get rich? Because people think of that. You don't understand what I'm saying?
Right, sure.
All right.
Because I guess most people were poor back in those days.
Well,
and the
most people are poor now.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
true too.
Yeah, half the population lives on less than $2 a day, and
Yeah.
half of them on less than $1, and they're in terrible circumstances.
They are then.
Yeah. So I mean that's the case with most of the world.
Sure.
So people are concerned with those material realities and everything.
Absolutely. We have to pay the bills, as they say. You know?
Yeah.
So that's a reality.
So it's practicality. Is there a connection between, let's say, practicality and entrepreneurism? That they're practical people, they get things done, they don't just, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Most entrepreneurs have to keep their feet on the ground as their dreams and aspirations are being expanded.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I took on the name of Evstaveous, which comes from my saint,
Mm-hmm.
Evstaveous, which means one who has his feet firmly planted on the ground.
Is that what your name? But that's also Steve, right?
Right, that's Steve.
Yeah.
Um,
But Evstaveous is the Greek.
Is the Greek,
Uh-huh.
and this bishop came to me and says, you know, you have a saint. And I said, oh, really? What's the saint's name? He says, Saint Evstaveous.
Uh-huh.
So I asked him, I said, what does that mean? He goes,
Mhm.
one who has his feet firmly planted.
I'll take it. Is that what? So you like to be thought of as one. All right. Now, what about some
Yeah.
people will make it to contradicting people who have something, their feet practically on the ground. That usually has to do with being practical with bills and keeping
Logical
and all that kind of. And the other one you were using was imagination, which
Right.
sometimes, like John Lennon said, imagine. You can imagine things, and it's not. Those two things seem to be opposites in many
They
people's
are.
mind. Imagination, or thinking that way, visionary, and practicality clash very often. But you're trying to say the entrepreneur can maybe wed those two things.
I
and
think
bring
it's
them
important
together
for
in
an
one?
entrepreneur to
Do you have a
that.
visionary? Would it be if you're a visionary entrepreneur rather than a practical entrepreneur, or is an entrepreneur necessarily practical in their approach to things? Because practical usually, or very often, eliminates the idealistic or the visionary.
Well, let me share with you what
It can't be
other
done.
interpretation
Can't be done.
of a
You know,
visionary may
Mr.
be.
Galileo, it can't have a sun
A
in the middle of the
visionary
universe.
is a dreamer
Mhm.
that knows how to get it done.
A visionary is a dreamer. Okay.
Okay, so a lot of people have dreams. Oh, wouldn't it be great if we could take a spaceship and fly to the whatever star? But a visionary
Yeah.
is a person that will go back and after that experience of that thought,
Mm-hmm.
do the steps that are necessary to actually bring it into fruition and make it so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know,
And there are new realities that are possible by the evolving, changing conditions.
constantly.
So there are new opportunities and possibilities that history hasn't allowed for. So the visionary is one who can see that. Bill Gates, I guess, did with this thing called a computer and the
Absolutely.
microprocessors and things like that. And they could see it. Or Edison, or
Oh,
Henry
Wright.
Ford, Wright. All of those kind of
Always.
things are visionary kind of things who can see. And there are changing material realities in terms of that people can tap into, and they will. The practical-minded person often will not be able to make that leap of understanding.
No, they won't because they've been
Often,
taught to be
because they're
regimented.
security-minded.
Well, that
Is
too.
there a
very
risk?
much.
Is there a risk involvement with
Always.
trying to be entrepreneurial on the edge of understanding these
An
things?
entrepreneur may be rich several times over and poor several times over in his lifetime.
Mhm.
And it doesn't really matter to him because it's the experience that is more important than being the rich, having the
having
riches.
the material success.
Right. I mean, that comes with being successful in your entrepreneurial experience, you know, allowing that process. But then again, it can go bust, and how that happens is that a new technology takes over, or something of that sort, and or you have a great dream and you create it, but the technicians make it cost so much that it actually, you know, destroys it. So I mean, we as entrepreneurs are more interested in getting the project across and so why I really enjoy the name Evstaveous
all right.
is that because as a visionary,
it's got a good Greek sound to it, doesn't it? Yeah,
it sure does.
Yeah,
is that because my dreams are so lofty and big, and I go into the Universal Akashic Records, which you still say, what is that about? But because I'm there, I also have to be logical in the approach of how it can be used for humanity, how in a real life experience people can use it. So you have to have some common sense approach to those huge visionary approaches to whatever's coming through with you at that time. So now I'm back with Bob Gabriel. He's teaching me how to promote concerts. Okay, I'm back with Bob.
Yeah, and we've gone. We haven't hardly gotten up to the present.
I know.
You know, that was still back 20 years ago.
I
or
know.
something. Yeah. Well,
So
it's amazing how interesting an individual life can be if looked at.
every life is a movie.
Yeah,
Everybody has a movie within
Everybody
them.
is a movie. Alfred Hitchcock once said, movies are life with the boring parts taken out.
Absolutely.
Is there an element of the gambler in the entrepreneur?
Absolutely.
Gambler, a plunger.
You take many chances, but hopefully these chances are somewhat with a point of looking at the percentages. Percentage-wise, is this going to work? Now there are good entrepreneurs and there are bad entrepreneurs.
Yeah, there's probably more bad ones that don't make it or something.
Absolutely,
like
because
it's
they don't have one of those missing fundamentals pieces that makes a visionary and a dreamer a dreamer.
Yeah.
Because action. It's one of my mentors, Peace Mother. She has a great book called The Impeccable Warrior. She goes, Steve. But she doesn't call me Steve. She calls me Evstaveous. She says that's the name you should keep. She goes, Evstaveous, love the show, do the work.
Yeah, do both, right?
Yeah, I mean, the show part is important because you get it out there and you get the process out there. But it's the work behind it that actually makes it happen.
Yeah, but I was thinking of it in a gambling metaphor or something like that, because it's like. It's creative. It's pushing the envelope. It's creative. It's trying something new, taking a chance, roll of the dice or something like that. But I mean, you could go to a casino. You could do that, and you could roll the dice. But if you're entrepreneurially involved in a project that you have some hand in, you have a greater control over the results of what's going to happen than if you were to go to the racetrack.
Absolutely.
I told you the other day that there was this cartoon where the two guys are going into the racetrack, and the one guy says to the other guy, Sam, I hope the heck that we can break even today, because I really need the money, which is sort of a thing that the person who doesn't, you understand what I'm saying? And there's an element of that in trying to do something new.
Especially when you're starting off.
Maybe it's art. I mean, Michelangelo made the David, and then he had to go and make other things.
Right.
It's
a process.
It's a process in universe, I think, maybe a creative process.
Absolutely.
Perhaps if the human being or the human species has a purpose, it might be that purpose. It's fulfilling its purpose in a creative, leading edge kind of way.
Well, take the artist, for instance, an entrepreneur.
Yeah, the artist.
A lot of artists now don't want to teach, for the simple reason because it takes so much time to create art, and the time that they want to do to create their legacy of work, it gets robbed. But they have to pay the bills, so they teach. But most of them don't want to teach. So what happens is that, well, what is the process? Well, the process is, the gallery dealer. Does he offend, the person that does the buying, the investor, or is he a good gallery person? Does he really know how to talk to the people? And you have to get to that person in order to sell your work.
Yeah.
You see?
Now
So there's a process of that.
Okay.
But getting back to, and I'll move this along because
we may be able to get to where we're going to be able to get less and less concentration upon the marketplace, because we were talking entrepreneurial creativity and so forth, and those are marketplace things. You're going to measure the success. You measure Bill Gates' success by the fact that he made a lot of money. He made a lot of success. That's how they measure.
Some people
and it might be we're going to get into a context where that kind of a measurement system, whether it's grades in school for 3-year-olds or something like that. They got little hoops they have to jump through or something according to somebody's pattern that they think is really important or something like that. It's a training to fit into the market, into a behavioral psychology maze kind of thing. You're outer directed. They may be getting to the point where it'll be just the creation of the people doing things that they are moved by their own inner spirit or something. So it may not be tied up to where everybody's going to be constrained by the marketplace and by the economic realities, although
that's what my Peace Foundation's about. Exactly that.
Oh, yeah. But we may be transcending scarcity or something of that sort.
We can.
Yeah.
We're at this very...
I mean, collectively as a human society.
Right. We're at this very, very critical point in life.
Yeah, it seems that way.
That we either grow up or blow up.
Mm-hmm. You think that, yeah.
We have passed the point that we have the ability to blow ourselves to annihilation.
Yeah, apparently that is the case. We can destroy the whole species for the first time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we
not
also,
a small matter.
No, not a small matter at all. But we can also create this paradigm shift where people are no longer struggling and money is no longer an issue, but your dreams and aspirations. So
that's a big jump.
Well,
and how do you measure it? How do you measure it?
I don't think you measure it as much as you apply mechanisms that either bring you closer to blowing up or bring you closer to being at that point where money is no longer an issue. So what mechanisms do you choose, and how do we approach that? And that's how what I do in the Peace Foundation is apply these mechanisms that free society from the tyranny of the day-to-day things that have bound us for 10,000 lifetimes.
That would be how to deal with the allocation of scarce things and money controlling the human scenario, the pattern being set by investment bankers or something like that, and that there could be a liberation of the human spirit that would get away from that. What's his name? Van Gogh painted all those beautiful sunflowers, and they were used to block a window in a chicken coop, and nobody paid any attention in this materialistic, money-oriented context of measuring everything by this quantitative money thing. And they never had any context of understanding that as being relevant art until they fetched $30 million at Sotheby's or something. Then it got, you know, it's something like that.
Sure.
But they're going to get past that. But to get past that, they'd better have some sort of an answer of how you're going to deal with those material questions that so plague most people and keep them in the constraint of thinking there's not nearly enough, and there is not, the way the social organization is set up. Maybe we need some really radically new economic organizing of principles to free, if not ourselves, maybe the generations that follow, from the constraints of an economic system that is top-down authoritarian, and in a certain sense, Marxists used to use the term wage slavery, but they're all tied up in authoritarian institutions rather than letting the human spirit be free in a way.
Right, sure.
And it maybe we're at a moment of liberation, human liberation, or vision of that.
We could be. I
mean, it'll be entrepreneurs that will develop that new kind of opening, I think, like an artist. It's a creative artist thing, maybe. I'm just fishing around.
No, well, I think you're using the right lure of thought, if I may use that as metaphor. So, and that's what I'm doing with the Peace Foundation, and I'll kind of swing it kind of quickly. So when I learned that I could work with this entrepreneurial experience and work with the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young understanding of the concert, how that was created, to be shown how it was, that it wasn't something magical. It was actually, there was a human being, and he had this idea, which was an entrepreneur, to bring this venue into this area, and that it was the area was ripe for the experience. You see, that's what an entrepreneur does. Then I got to work with him with Cat Stevens. You know, he was born in Cyprus, the same place where my family comes from.
Is that right? Yeah.
We're Cypriot Greeks.
Yeah, right. What part of Greece are your family? We're from
Cyprus.
No, I know that, but where not Greece, but in Cyprus? Famagusta or?
No, my mom is from Morfu, which is the occupied site at this point.
It's up in the north, right? Yeah. We're going to be talking about that in the next program.
That's a very interesting subject. I mean, I'm paying taxes to blow up my own relatives right now, you know.
Well, okay, we can go on that if you want. We've got about 5, 6, 8 minutes left,
but we'll go into that another time.
Yeah.
And my father comes from Gatadris, which is the non-occupied site. But to kind of because we only have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Time goes by so fast. We probably could
We
do
are
10
at Cat
shows.
Stevens now.
Yeah.
And
so I got to see how that worked. So from that point, my family actually we sold our restaurants and we bought a motel at the beachfront. The next year it became a boom, and everybody started coming to the beach. So
at Virginia Beach.
At Virginia Beach.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's a lot of fun. So I'm going to move this on because we have such a short time. I got to work in a gourmet restaurant, do the advertising and all that kind of stuff, and it was like I was in my own domain. And then they decided that they're going to put more motel up and tear down the gourmet restaurant. And of course, at that point, I played a song, they're tearing down Paradise to put up a parking lot.
Remember that one? Who was that? I forget the song. I remember.
I forget. So
put up a parking lot or something.
So I get on my sailboat and I'm hearing New York City going bankrupt.
In the 70s.
Yeah. How can the financial capital of the world go bankrupt? I said, God, I'm getting out of here to the islands. Make a long story short.
To the Caribbean?
Yeah, just I could do this in any place, you know. And the voice said, that inner voice that I always talked about, said, weren't you born in New York? And I said, yeah. It says, weren't you part of that peace and love movement? Why don't you go find out why? You're the person that can make the change. Can possibly make the change.
And you came back to New York?
And I said, don't make me do this, man. You know?
Not back to New York. Bankrupt.
Not New York. I want to go out to the islands. I'm a surf dog, you know. I want the beauty. I don't want, you know, all the
But your responsibility brought you back to Gotham City.
Yes, it did. And sure enough, in the restaurant, somebody had a project that led me to New York, and led me to the Richie Havens experience, and to working with you.
Yeah, we did a couple. We did some programs back. We did that Rabbi Dome. Remember the spiritual leader of the Natura Carta. That was interesting. You shot that, and
then which brought me through the experience of the assassination of John Lennon, and all these awakenings happened, and that's where the United Music Front and United Peace Foundation was developed, and in it was the mechanisms that allowed that I developed for the Peace Foundations. For instance, one, and I encourage every one of you, if you haven't had a chance, contact me at Peace Founder, you know, and you have the graphics for that.
At the end, we'll put it up,
please, and I'll be more than happy to share more detail. But one of the mechanisms that I will talk about right now is that save $3 a day. If you could save $3 a day for your child, then 10, 11, 12, let them earn it themselves, either by babysitting or whatever mechanism we set up. By the time they retire, they'll have $4.5 million.
Yeah, the miracle of compound interest.
Right. The money doubles every 10 years, and at 10%. So money would no longer be an issue. So when we're
That's
getting
a big
back,
jump. That's a big jump.
This is the jump that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I know.
Allowing children no longer to be bound by the constraints of you got to get a job, you got to do good in school so you can perform well. But to say, no, money is no longer an issue, but your dreams and aspirations. Here are all the master teachers. Now, when the master teachers teach you, let's say you make $20,000 to $30,000 a year, you tithe over $100 a month. It's a different paradigm shift than allowing you to go through school suffering, fearing, so you can get a job, and then get in debt by going to college, and then having to take it out on society. You see, now you're actually feeling what was given to you as a passion, experiencing the passion, and being a really productive citizen in a loving, caring environment. So that was just one way. And I know we're running short of time.
No, that's a vision. That's a vision of a world that a lot of people would find very disturbing. Like, for instance, my drill sergeant in the Army would not think it's very good that I have the ability to not listen to him when he sets down the rules on following the drill. And there's a lot of people.
But what's the reason for that? The reason is because they want you to be a regimented, thinking machine in a big microcosm of energy that you're not supposed to be in control of. The general and are control. You are just supposed to be this little peon that they move.
But you will do what you're told.
Absolutely.
And they want to be able to control over
mindless
the masses.
robots.
Well, but you see, you're making a Yeah, okay, but I mean
it's a different whole way of approaching life.
And that they will say that it's only responsible to teach you not to be following your own dream or something, but do what the teacher tells you.
Absolutely.
Do what the senior vice president tells you. Keep the organization, keep your place on the line. Practical. And if you don't, you're going to run into great difficulty because of the way the society's organized. And all of the society's organized that way in order to keep a structure that will give coherence to the system, because if you don't have that, you've got anarchy, and then nothing's going to work.
Well, that's what they want you to think.
That's what they think, and a lot of people have bought into that.
Yeah, sure. And
they get a sense of reality by performing those functions by which they get rewarded, like the mice in a maze find the cheat. They get rewarded, and they get a sense of identity from that.
And they become
complacent. And what's going to happen to their sense of identity when those institutional frameworks are not necessary, or maybe we're transcended in some sort of a cyber way or something? How are people going to learn to be able to be functioning on their own without some sort of clues from outside, particularly financial clues as to this is the right thing, the wrong thing, and the sense of responsibility? Big question.
If you were a big Star Trek fan, you would realize that money would no longer be an issue, but your dreams and aspirations. Actually, what it would do is take us into the next millennium of great creativity, when we'll be, so to speak, igniting the different planets into other civilizations, discovering other civilizations. So it's a fearful thing when you don't know what's going to happen. So a lot of people attack that.
Yeah, and that's the source that parents will defend their children. Be practical.
Right, sure.
Do that and take care of that and everything.
It's a big leap for mankind.
Yeah, it's a big leap,
but we can do it.
Yeah,
we can do it.
Well,
and,
perhaps. But
I'm
there's a lot of
nurture
people.
It on, as they say.
Well, all right. And you're an entrepreneurial trying to create a different kind of world and everything. There's a lot of people who want to have the world the way it is and people with a sense of responsibility have to be listened to, because you got to make sure the lights go on and things are in place, and you don't make some sort of but a new a vision toward that is something that could be presented in a way, maybe a massive involvement or something.
How about
the leaders of the system could be involved with it, perhaps more than they've been able to be.
Well, I mean, the experiment would be, you don't change it right away for the masses. You create it for the people that are ready to make the change. And like, if it's good fruit, people will be able to pluck it and say, wow, we could utilize this and make it work for the rest of the civilization.
Well, when you're talking about a real paradigm shift, there should be a place where the ideas could be brought up in a systems way and understood comprehensively, intellectually, and so forth. And maybe one of the places the discussion of these kind of things without having a direct responsibility is in public access cable television, where ideas can be discussed, brought up, and then people can come in and so forth. But we're in a time of transition, qualitative change, and I think the entrepreneurial spirit, the creative spirit of being able to have the individuals develop their thing is part of a creative pattern which will lead us into a maximally engaged humanity, perhaps, and a change, if that change is called for. A lot of people think it is, in a systems way. An entrepreneurial spirit will be part of that context by which that change might be able to start.
As Jim would say, from your mouth to God's ears, may it happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, Stevie, we run out of time. Evstaveous Neskis, entrepreneur, visionary, old friend of mine and of the world, and happy to be bringing those perceptions. Tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. Steve, all the Evstaveous, thanks a lot for coming in. It's real good to see you here on the set.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
As always.
We'll be back again tomorrow. So, you go on talking. We only got you up to Cat Stevens, more or less.
Well, I kind of pulled it off and got the Peace Foundation.
Well,
and brought it,
and you're doing a lot of stuff.
Connected it with that thing about the children experiencing that open-ended approach of not making them, giving them the grade, which is what you don't want them to do. You know, everybody should have an A. Just experience the experience and stop worrying about if you're going to have an A or B or a C or a D.
Yeah, there's just some people are more comfortable with authoritarian context than I am. I happen not to like it. Some people
authority. I mean, in the sense that you have to do this and you should do it this way.
I don't like the idea of people having power over it. A lot of people are in the business of getting power over people. That's what a lot of the political process is
makes
about.
Them feel
the corporate process
makes
is
them feel big, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and it's part of it, you know. And I guess the military is set up that. Corporations are mostly set up that way. systems are set up that way, so that the person makes a decision, and the people have to do what they're told, so the system will work. Okay, thanks, honey.
Yeah, the lower peons have to do that.
Okay, here we go. That's a wrap. There you go. Well, we got something said. We got up to Cat Stevens.
I know. Well,
okay.
How did they come out, sweetheart?
Oh.
Mm-hmm.